So, 2 days left. Let's talk the final thoughts on the gameplay as well as the ISS Vanguard campaign before it ends. I kind of broke down the actual campaign page and my thoughts on GameFound in general on the previous video. I'll link it below if in case you're interested or you missed that. But in general, there's a lot of information about ISS Vanguard out there, and right now Awakened Realms has been very responsive in terms of critiques and backer concerns about the product in the first place. There have been gameplay videos from Quackalope, Board Game Co., and the Dice Tower, so that you can see both the ship phase as well as the planet phase. So someone else wanted to join us on our journey tonight, and let's talk both the pros, the cons, and just the in general concerns about this campaign going forward. So first, let's talk the 5 reasons you should be interested, or the 5 reasons that are very positive in terms of reasons to back. In general, number 1, speaking of Awakened Realms, the core pledge, even with the shipping included, is going to be a very good deal, especially from a value standpoint. If you did nothing else with this game, even with the negative press that Etherfields has gotten recently, if you just get the core without any additional things, you're going to make your money back. Now, I know Etherfields isn't exactly the best example now because people are selling in a panic, but in general, the other games, Nemesis, Tainted Grail, and before, as well as probably 6 months from now, Etherfields is going to hold its value. So you're not going to lose money, especially because some of this stuff is just harder to get at the retail level to begin with, speaking of Nemesis and Tainted Grail. So you know, just looking at the core plus whatever is finally all going to be included in these stretch goals, including all the stuff that they've shown, that the value is going to be there for $99. You're going to get your bang for your buck. Secondly, if you are a miniature person, their miniatures are absolutely fantastic, freaking top notch. You have no concerns there based on the other campaigns that they have put out already. The production in general is not usually the issue of the quality of the game that they are putting out. Third thing that is worth pointing out is something I've already mentioned, is the fact that we have actual gameplay. So you should already have a relatively good idea if this game is for you or not. If you like dice, this is more skewed towards you. If you like campaign with a narrative, this is very positive. That is one of the big points as number 4 that Awakened Realms has done a really good job with, the actual narrative of these games. Fifth, tying in with number 3 right now, is the gameplay seems solid. Watching some of the gameplay videos, this is not necessarily the mishmash, paddywhack, throw a dog a bone conglomeration of mechanics that I initially feared that it would be, seeing all of the various parts and components and elements on this game page. It seems well thought out. It seems very thorough. And it's a more of a puzzle without necessarily feeling like you're just doing a puzzle mechanically. That there is a thematic incorporation. What are some of my concerns or my reasons why maybe you should not back this game? I think this page in and of itself says it as a whole. If you do not like dice, this game is not going to be for you. There is an element, especially on the planet phase, as you were moving around from location to location, that reminded me, when they were rolling, of Dead of Winter. And one of the biggest criticisms of Dead of Winter was you roll that exposure die and you can just die. And personally, I think that's excitingly hilarious, but also frustratingly pull it out if you actually have hair sort of situation, if you happen to roll the 1X or skull. Going along with that, there is a little bit of roll to move. And I know people then just in general are not a big fan of games like that. It's a little bit simplistic when it comes to that element of things. You know, okay, I want to go here. I'm going to have to roll a die to see if I can go there. Going back to the dice, I know that there is a dice aid, but that really bothers me that there is no other distinguishing feature that allows you to differentiate them on first glance quite easily. Because I could imagine Not necessarily within the game always having issues, but the setup of this game after you've put it away. Okay, which dice did you have? Now I'm going to have to try and figure. There's a lot of minutia like that in general that worries me. When I'm looking at the ship phase and seeing that there are 5 phases, all with different rules, and the rules, and I'm not sure if this is a consequence or just a positive that they're trying to be upfront and deal with in advance, that the rules are printed on that page. And so is it that there are so many small, tiny scenario rules, like, oh, well, this is what happens, but oh, in this special scenario, when you have this many morale, or in this section, if you happen to have this much, this special thing happens instead of the normal rule taking place. And I don't know. We're not having, a real sit-down access to the rule book, not being able to sit and take a look at a physical component in front of me. It's hard to say how much of that is going to be very intuitive. Like, oh yeah, hey, remember in this phase that if we have this, it's this. Or how much of it is going to be, okay, now, what was the special rule of this phase? Need to go look it up again. There's a reason that they had, apparently, they talk about it, I think Jeremy does on Man vs. Meeple, a 3-hour session of rules go through, play through, etc., to make sure that when they were playing it for these videos, they played it right. I don't have 3 hours to teach the people at my table how to play this right to make sure I'm getting all the right rules in a campaign narrative game whose outcomes may be drastically different if I do not remember a small rule or not. That goes into my next concern, that the Dice Tower playthrough was with 3 people. Quackalope Board Game Co. did 2 people. I just get this looming feeling that this has the high potential for a large amount of quarterbacking should you or your group tend to play that way. And my personal policy at my own table is I do not quarterback. I say purposefully to other people when they ask, yes, I'll field the question, but do what you feel is the right move to try to avoid that element. With 1 and 2 people, I think it's more discussion. With 3 and 4, I think you're going to end up with more quarterbacking and a little bit less discussion. Or if you end up with more discussion, it reminds me of Frostpunk, where there is just so much discussion and so much battling back and forth about what to do, it leads to that ship phase being significantly longer than ideally it would be at those higher player counts. Then that leads to people being bored by the downtime. That leads them being to even worse, disinterested, which leads to not a very fun experience in the first place. And I can deal with the rules and minutia, that's fine. But above all else, it has to be fun. It has to make people say, I can't wait to see what happens again. I want to play this because of how it is engaging me with its theme, with its mechanics, and with what is the potential of happening next. My top 10 games of 2020 that's coming out later this week, there's a reason that I have games on my list there that a lot of other people don't, is because I count that fun engagement factor, I think, personally, a lot higher than other people who are looking for a purely mechanically very sound, very technical, very balanced experience. That's important, but to me personally, it's not as important. So what I'm saying, I guess, is I fear that like Seventh Continent, like Tainted Grail before, the recommended player count is going to be 1 or 2, rather than what I am looking for in a heavier narrative campaign game that labels itself as a cooperative game, some asymmetry that is going to make each person really focus on theirs and not necessarily try to control what everyone else is doing at the same time. And I don't know right now, based off of gameplay videos alone, are not going to tell me that. I have some concerns as well about a few minor mechanical things. The binder, the dials on the binder, the dice and the cards around the table and on the individual player mats. There's a lot of elements that with a slight shift can easily be dispersed or messed up very easily. And making sure those are secure when it comes to the binder and the sleeves in the binder for some of the cards, the dials on the inside of the binder, because especially if you are transitioning, either opening and closing the binder frequently or just in between games, I have run into that experience with something like Aeon's End, where those dials do not hold if you tilt them at all. So what is going to be done to make sure that they are solid and they are not going to be affected by that? Quality control issues like that concern me, because there are a lot of potential quality control issues in this game that some of the other games that they have previously put out do not necessarily have. Indentations on some of the player cards to hold the dice, to hold some of the tokens, to hold some of just whatever needs to be held in place would be a tremendous upgrade. I would rather see things like that necessarily than another expansion or another character expansion to give me more of the same. Make the experience better, not necessarily bigger. You can do both, but I think this speaks to the last point. Awakened Realms, bigger is not always better. And can you prevent the bloat that has been a big concern of the 3 other previous big campaigns that are in the process of being delivered to people or have been delivered to people already? I think this game is going to be very sound, but my worry is that it's going to be so hard to get to the table frequently because of some of the overhead I mentioned, that it is going to remind me more of Kingdom Death Monster or Twilight Imperium, in the sense that you really have to have a dedicated couple people that really know their stuff when it comes to this game, as opposed to the I'm just going to take it out and we're going to play a fun mission once or twice, even though they've said that that's going to be incorporated. As I mentioned in the previous video, you can take it as a positive or a minus, because you're dedicating resources to that maybe could be used to tightening up the game. Because as we've seen with other Kickstarter and crowdfunding campaigns, every game does not need a solo, a cooperative, and a competitive. Because ultimately what happens is one of those areas is much weaker than the others, and the whole product as a package suffers. I don't want any element like that to be an afterthought or to take away from another element or style within the game. So what am I going to do? I'm going to back it. I'm going to back it. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to get the core pledge. I'm going to keep the core pledge, and we're going to see how it goes. I'm not a miniature guy. I don't think the miniatures are necessary, especially with the difference in this game and the style of this game compared to the other previous games where they seem to have more thematic incorporation. I think this is going to be a big one for them in terms of bloat, in terms of can they tighten the reins and show that the development of the game is just as well thought out and well executed as the idea is in the first place. Because all of their games have been grandiose ideas with varying degrees of execution, overall more positive than negative, but definitely not without flaws. And so I'd like to see less flaws. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not asking for perfect, but I'm asking for continued improvement between projects. So there you go. Those are my final thoughts. Let me know what you think. Are you going to back it? Are you going to keep it? Or are you going to even do the safest route of all and $1 pledge to give yourself more time, which I think is, in this case, a very, very strong option as well. So that's it. ISS Vanguard. January's 2021's first big crowdfunding campaign. We're going to see a lot more in January. I think January and February are going to be explosive in terms of the amount of high quality content that comes out. So buckle up. I just put out another video the other day about 3 that are going to be coming in this first quarter, 2 of which are now in January and 1 that's getting pushed a little later. Primal the Awakening, Agemonia, Epic 7 Arise. So check that out if those are of interest to you. They're of high interest to me, just like this one was. So there will be more coverage of them as well in the future. As always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, especially as a small content creator. Goal of 2021 subscribers in 2021. So help me get there. It'll be a fun adventure. Stay classy. Great Ninja, I'll see you next time.